In my personal growth, I've found ways to analyze and evaluate my past life, how I have progressed from there so far, and how that affects the outcome of the future. I have also found ways to glorify my future and how and what that will look like once it comes. However, I have struggled fundamentally to connect those two aspects of my life. I will get caught up in the goals, specifically accomplishing those goals, making it to the finish line so I could relax. Or alternatively, I would be too caught up in my head, reflecting on the past and evaluating how to become more cognizant of those warning signs and red flags and how to be aware and dodge them or respond to them properly. And I was starting to recognize this deep disconnect. And this disconnect left me without energy on a regular to do or even want to do much of anything. And it wasn't just physical energy, but mental energy. Mentally, I was just drained all the time. And then one day I had a particular revelation. I didn't feel present, and not just me physically, but my life had no energy. And it was a simple revelation, but a very peculiar one, because the revelation to this dilemma I was creating for myself came as nothing more than needing a battery. The first thought that comes to mind personally when I thought about a battery was how growing up, we actually believe that putting batteries in the freezer helped them last longer. And in some cases, it would, but generally, it was a bad idea. I found this out one day when one exploded right after I popped it out of the handheld on a hot day after school. It was a little scary. But the other thing was the fact that batteries depend on two charges to operate: a negative charge and a positive charge. Now, humans being humans, when we think of the word negative, would apply to most things that are resources like batteries or electricity. We chalk it up to a simple ideal of negative goes to positive. That's how it's supposed to work. Cut and dry, end of story. We typically don't bother with the nitty gritty of the logic of it all, as long as it works how we need it to work. When it comes to ourselves, however, we naturally try to avoid things that are or feel negative because we don't want to feel or experience negative things or emotions. That's survival instincts kicking in the high gear, trying to keep us safe. And that's normal. We should want to feel safe and secure in our lives. And we should want to find that safety and security. But what about the aspects of the negative that we can't change? the things that existed and have already happened. That charge exists almost in perpetuity. Until that charge has been utilized, it will continue to exist for as long as it is there, because there is nothing to attract it. There is nowhere for it to be utilized. That charge, I feel, is and always will be the foreverness of our past. And again, with anything negative, I feel we will allow it to exist with itself, because if we address it, we have to acknowledge it. If we acknowledge it, we have to accept that negativity. And we are engrossed by the thought of succumbing to something negative. In my life, for the longest time, trying to acknowledge that negative meant trying to change the nature of what it was. Instead of it being a traumatic experience or a poor experience or a regretful experience, a bad habit, some derivative of negative, I tried my best to exemplify what that negative was. It had to be more. It had to have a purpose to fuel something for me going forward. It had to be fundamental, foundational. It had to be groundwork for what was going to come into my life. It had to be anything but negative. Now, this is how most people think about negative aspects of their lives, I feel. However, the problem that comes with this, I feel, is the fact I was trying to live in spite of the past. I was trying to live in spite of the negative aspects that have occurred. And because of that, I was unaccepting of the past and was inhibiting my mental state towards progress. I couldn't accept the negative. And because of this, I felt bad. And I felt drained. And I felt like I had nothing in my life. So I did what was normal. I did what I felt like everybody should do. I started looking towards what would make me feel good, which was the future. I started looking towards the positive charge. I have always been one to try and exaggerate the positive of things. People I meet with one or two qualities I like about them on the first impression, the benefits of analyzing and self-reflection on a constant basis with no breaks, no downtime in between, even looking outside and saying, this sunny day is just for me to enjoy and to have a good day. And this overindulgence is something that I feel we don't recognize as possibly harmful in the long run without checking the implications of it. When I started looking towards a positive charge, the future, the end goals of what would come and what would be, the natural thing happened. I started to feel good. I felt good because the idea of what the future would be for me, how it would play out, and the thought filled me with what I thought was just pure bliss. And that pure bliss supplemented for what I was missing with the negative. As much as I was refusing to accept the past and what has happened, I was overly accepting of the future and what in reality didn't even exist yet. It was a reward without substance. I was excited for the idea of the award. To live in the fantasy of what could possibly be, what would lift me up and carry me through above and beyond everything I've been through and away on this electrical positive circuit was so much more fulfilling than it was to reflect and appreciate the negative aspects of what had occurred. The things dragging me down. But what I didn't know would happen also happened. I started to feel overwhelmingly unfulfilled. It's like a constant crash after a dopamine high, the emptiness after a sugar rush, all the anticipation of the buildup, and there was no payout, there was no reward. We could sit back and have all the fascinating thoughts and regals of glory and pure happiness, but the reality was, again, it wasn't reality. And I started to feel unfulfilled again because there was no flow. No actual one anyways, away from the negatives of the past into the positive of the future, simply because I wasn't taking the steps to reach that future. But I never looked at it that way. My world, my progress felt dead in the water. There was no energy, there was no charge, there was no living. And then I noticed there was this space, this gap shifting along with me as life progressed along, running tandem with me at any given point that I hadn't noticed before. I remember thinking retrospectively about that void and became increasingly curious about it and why it was growing for so long over such an extended period of time and what it even was. And then it came to me. It was like a soft heartbeat you hear in the quiet when you're sitting alone with your thoughts and you realize why it feels like your life has no energy to it at all. A fundamental understanding from what I understand about them is that batteries themselves, like electricity, create a current. A constant oscillation of positive and negative charges flowing into and with each other. This constant flow of currents becomes what is called an abstract neutral quantity. It becomes neither negative or positive. It just is. And the only way to define how a charge is applied or identified is the application it is used for. But overall, that constant flow just is, but it exists in the current. Now, how does this apply to the current thought process? If we want our toys to run, we have to apply a current. If we want our cars to run, our devices, our smartphones, our OLED monitors, our smart TVs, everything, if we want it to function, you have to apply a battery or a power supply to initiate a current to it. But in order to create a current, you need a conduit or a source of power. The battery is that power. It exists as a conduit. If there is no presence of a battery, a power supply, something to motivate the currents and the functions to move, then of course it won't move. As we like to call things with no power, it's dead. My watch is dead. My computer is dead. My monitor is dead. My TV is dead. My car is dead. My phone is dead. But when it comes to our own lives, to the positive and negatives and how they identify and create a flow of energy in our lives, we need to apply a current. And the only way to bridge these two charges in our lives, for me to bridge those two charges, to have bridged those two charges, is to realize what was missing in that gap, in that void. And it was just a conduit. And like a battery, the only way to fill that gap is to exist in the current, and we fit perfectly. I realized in order to create a current, I had to be the conduit in my own life. To be able to shuttle the negatives into a positive and to be able to observe the negative from a positive openly. I had to choose to be present here, today, right now in my own life. We have to choose to be our best source of energy. And I won't mean that in a way of just putting in just enough effort to get by for the moment. Because no one I know pulls the battery out of their car every time they get to their destination after a journey. So why should we choose to exist outside of our own lives? I feel as we progress through our lives, we are both conduits and currents of our past to future and back again as we need. But in order to recognize that, we have to be obligated to ourselves to accept that we have to be present where we are and accept both as they come, as what was and what will be. And even at rest, we accept that the work for now is done and there is more to come. But presently, this is where we are and this is what it is. Not negative, not positive. It just is right now. And that is okay. For me, by deciding that I wanted to be that current that carries and converts that energy between the past and the future, I openly decided I wanted nothing more than to be a conduit in my own life for where I am right now. I learned that the past is in fact not a negative, but a resource for the reflection to adjust and build towards the future. And the future, in fact, can be an apt reflection of me now as I am. And as an example, what I might not be doing to step into that future. Because if I am not present here today, how can I recognize the past for where I was and help shuttle myself with this power to create something more into the future? I feel we have so much power to offer ourselves in our lives. But in order to do so, we have to choose to be present. And once we are, we have to decide how to appropriately distribute our own power. The constant flow of negative and positive charges creates an abstract neutral quantity, but we are in charge of identifying what that charge in our life means to and how it will empower us. It is a peculiar thing In fact, that's something as simple as choosing to be present, to insert ourselves back into our lives, can be as revitalizing as it was. That is empowering in and of itself. And it is so curious to me, for me, that it feels as similar to something as simple as needing a battery. Maybe it's the same for you. Maybe you're the type of person that leans into the negative so far that there's too much of a buildup in your mind to try and get away from it. And it feels like there's constant pressure for you to just exist. Leaning a bit into the positive could give you a bit of alleviation to let off some of the pressure. It's all right to want a bit of good in your life. Or you're the type of person that leans so far into the positive, you're left wondering why it feels like you're constantly short-circuiting when everything should be good and happy and bright and positive. A bit of negative doesn't mean bad per se. It just means you're reserving some energy for you to help you feel fulfilled for yourself, even if it's just for the moment while you rest. But either way, we should want to choose to be current where we are right now, because there is no deciding which direction this flow can occur if you are not there with a willingness to direct it. But maybe that's just me. What's going on, everybody? It's Nuancedd. I just wanted to take a moment to say I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here with me through this peculiar journey, and thank you for watching this through to the end with me. There's some aspects of this video generally that I want to revisit in the future because I would like to expand on them specifically. But for now, I enjoyed this particular philosophical analogy, and I hope you did too. I wanted to let you know that going forward, I plan on being a bit more consistent with this. I will be doing a bit more shorts with short form poetry, something that fits in about 3-minute time periods, as well as what I've been doing, little notations of what's going to be coming next in terms of videos. But I enjoy doing this. This adds something to my life that I need, and I want to continue to share it with whoever takes time to watch it. If you want to see more of this, subscribe to the channel. That's all you have to do. I would love to see you here again. Leave a comment down below. I would love to discuss this with you more and hear your thoughts on the video and your thoughts pertaining to it or events in your life related to it if you decide to share. But that's all I've got for this video. So until next time, feed your mind, fill your heart, and nurture your soul. And I'll see you next time. You take care of you.